I take great pains to emphasize the particular characteristics of a cult.
FBI we talking about. We doing something wrong and commit crime. Then why haven't the FBI done their job? Miguel, where you at? I want Miguel. We doing something wrong and commit crime. Then why haven't the FBI done their job?
There are also structural characteristics to a cult. And those are often seen in an authoritarian, even a despotic leadership. You've got to listen to what the leaders say and obey them without question. And that might be manifest in a particular prophet that has revealed the new truth through the cult, or it might be simply the leadership hierarchy. You've got to bow to it without question. Also, structurally, cults seek often to have an overt financial emphasis. And often they get you to pay substantial amounts of money into the cult. And this is a way of gaining further control over you personally. If you don't belong to their group, the group that has new revelation, the group that exclusively has that new revelation, you cannot be saved. And if you were a member of their group and you leave it, you lose your salvation.
I remember one day there was a class that Tazadaki was teaching at 1 West, 125th Street. Tazadaki stands up at the end of class one day and says that this is not the time that the apostles are going to be persecuted, being thrown in jail and be killed. He said that. He said that this is not the time for persecution against the church and against the apostles. That while everybody in the world is coming down, that the apostles at the Icgjc are going to be coming up. And all you see related to the Icgjc is tax fraud, damn lawsuits for dolls, for the damn play dolls. This is what the church is known for. The Icgjc is not known for making great prophecies about the H1N1 vaccine or about people coming back from a sickness and recovering from some impossible recovery. None of this is happening in the Icgjc. Nobody's being healed from blindness. People aren't walking after being crippled. This is not happening. So, what is the proof? Why should anybody believe in anything you guys are saying? Give yourself a good reason. Forget about what anybody else thinks. You need to give yourself a good reason. You need to be very critical. You need to be very cautious. You need to be very skeptical when it comes to what you choose to believe. How are you just going to believe anything based on blind faith? Because you're scared. Because you don't know what to do. The way they train you in that church is to be dependent on them. They tell you don't go out there and learn anything else. So whenever you hear a breakdown from Tazadaki, you go wild. As if he's the one that came up with the breakdown. Now, if you're not out there learning from other different sources, how would you know if Tazadaki didn't get that from somewhere else or not? They don't do any research, yet they're so quick to believe everything that comes out of this man's mouth without even verifying it themselves. It's called a confirmation bias, a cognitive bias. This has been studied for so many years. You think you guys are the first cult to come up with these things, calling yourselves the truth? That's old. You think this whole in Jesus Christ breakdown came from Tazadaki? That's an old breakdown. There was a class once at 1 West, 125th Street that Tazadaki, Jermaine Grant, was teaching. He was boasting about supposedly how the prophets in the Bible knew that the earth was spherical. But when you read the scripture that he pulls, it says that he sitteth upon the circle of the earth, not the circular earth. but it's the circle of the earth. And when you read that in Hebrew, which you guys never do, you don't go to your multiple sources to verify one thing and come to a rational conclusion. You just regurgitate everything from Tazadaki. You believe everything that comes out of that man's mouth because he says it with such conviction and he screams it and repeats it constantly in your brain. This is psychological manipulation 101. The chants. Have you guys not read how cults work? But either way, Tazadaki pulls the scripture, the circle, he sitteth upon the circle of the earth. That scripture wouldn't prove that anyways, because a circle can still be flat. That's number one. Number two, it says the circle of the earth. Something that belongs to the earth, not the circular earth. And when you look at that scripture, when you read that scripture in Hebrew, which you guys are so damn scared to do or something, it's like you don't like to look at multiple sources and then come to a conclusion. You just take what Tazadaki says as scripture. And don't even notice that he's twisting the scripture up to say whatever the hell he wants it to say. And that doesn't mean that he came up with that breakdown either, because that so-called breakdown of Isaiah of the circle of the earth has already been out before Tazadaki even came out with that at 1 West 125th Street in 2004, 2005, whenever that happened. Yet you guys are going nuts and crazy and insane up in that class as if God gave that to him, as if God revealed that to him. How do you know that he didn't get that from somewhere else? Because if you look it up, that understanding or that misunderstanding of that scripture was already floating around way before Tazadaki even brought that out in 2004 at 1 West 125th Street. I remember that class. There was a DVD about it. What these believers, these blind believers, fail to consider is that the breakdowns that Tazadaki brings to them have already been broken down, and he's regurgitating them to you, maybe putting his own twist on it, and then you're regurgitating it back to everybody else, and you think you have some type of wisdom, and you don't realize that this is just a breakdown coming from another individual with another twist to it. It's not that God gave him this breakdown. You have to prove that God gave you this breakdown. You're talking to a being like God. You're going to make an extraordinary claim like this, you better have extraordinary evidence for the claim.
The FBI we talking about. If we're doing something wrong and committing crime, then why haven't the FBI done it?